How we doing, everybody? It's your guy Wardy here, and as you can see, we're back at it, breaking down all the latest Mets news and rumors here in Metsland. This time, a July 29th edition, because if you guys have been following the platform at all over the past couple weeks, then you know that we have covered everything regarding the Mets and their current connections to players externally to a T. From guys not only like Luis Robert, which is going to take up the bulk of today's discussion, as well as key players there in Sandy Alcantara that we broke down more yesterday, Brandon Lowe, Camilo Doval, as of late, among many others that you guys can check out on previous content. But today, yet again, it has everything to do with Luis Robert because trade talks are officially heating up. It's one thing for the Mets to show interest in Luis Robert. It's another to have numerous reporters go out and reaffirm that the Mets are, if not the top dog, then one of the top dog suitors there for Robert and his services. And we have found out now, not only based on reporting from earlier today, but over the past 24 hours now, what the White Sox are looking for in a potential trade for Robert. What are the players that the Mets have actually already started negotiate with the White Sox in a potential deal? Because yes, that has in fact happened. We're going to get into the statuses of not only Luis Acuna, but most notably Mark Vientos, as he spoke to the media this past day after making it known that, yeah, I know I'm in trade rumors, speaking on Mark's behalf here. So we're going to get into his key remarks, what he has to say to the media, and how we should feel ultimately as Mets fans with his very uncertain future, the prospect costs that it may take to acquire Robert as well there, the demands from the White Sox, and a whole lot more in between to break down in this one. So sit back, relax, and get yourself ready for the ride that is our latest New York Metropolitan breakdown. But please make sure to hit that like and subscribe on your way in. And I want to see your initial reactions and thoughts here to the Luis Robert saga going on. Are you for a Robert trade or against a Robert trade? Because if there's one thing that I've noticed plenty is that there's a large contingent of fans that want Robert, and there's a good contingent of fans that want nothing to do with him, and there really has not been all that much in between. We're going to see if we can bridge this gap a little bit from now up until the deadline itself, everybody. But as well as you guys hitting those buttons, being great supporters as always, is the same way that our sponsors have been tremendous supporters here on the platform, making things stay afloat and keeping these things possible. And that is all thanks to our great friends there at Moomoo, the official trading platform of the New York Mets that we will get into later on in today's show, as well as our awesome friends at BetUS that have you covered for all of your sports betting needs. So just make sure you do it responsibly first and foremost. And SeatGeek, utilize our promo code for Wardy10. That way you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase. Link down below in the description. Thank you guys so much for checking that out, as well as hearing from your guy Wardy, as we have a very special event now just a couple days away there for the first ever official Wardy Day. It's Wardy here, and as you can see, we are at gorgeous Citi Field, and folks, you can get the ultimate, the prime experience with your guy Wardy at our first ever official Wardy Day. August 1st, Mets San Francisco Giants there for the evening game. The day after the MLB trade deadline, you, your friends, your loved ones, select Mets fans will get the ultimate experience with your guy Wardy. Not only are we going to hang out at the ball game together, but folks, look at the seating. We're going to be live here in the left field lounge. You guys will be able to chop it up with your guy Wardy. We're going to be debating as to who's the best pitcher of the rotation outside of Kodai Senga. We're going to be talking about who's the next best prospect to get called up. How do we feel about the trade deadline acquisitions? And guys, as you get back up here then, we are going to be giving you a $18 drink voucher, and with that drink voucher, you guys are going to be able to hit up the bars that we have right outside of here. So easy, so accessible. Again, prime seating, a truly fantastic experience. Our first ever Wardy Day here at Citi Field, guys, where you will get a chance to hang out with your guy Wardy. And the best part too, not only is it this amazing lounge in left field that you guys will hang out with me, but we're going to be on the field, pre-game access there for a group photo op. So I hope to see you, all you amazing Mets fans there. Click the link if you guys haven't already there to check out our available tickets, and let's go Mets. And not only are we going to be sitting here throughout the course of the ball game, you guys can also check out the seats that we have access to all here in the bar area here, right at the Milagro, where you guys can utilize your $18 drink voucher. Again, this is going to be at Wardy Day, August 1st, 2025. Oh wait, yeah, almost forgot. It's also fireworks night. Bang! Hope to see you guys there. Tickets again, everybody. We are now down to, I believe, 7 at absolute most. Still available for you guys to check out in the description and in the pinned comment down below. Cannot wait to see you amazing Mets fans there at Wardy Day. But let's get right into this discussion. As you guys can see here, has everything to do with one Luis Robert. And we know that Luis Robert obviously has pros as well as cons as a player. And we're going to not only expand more on that, but ultimately where things stand in the current status for the coveted outfielder. And as you guys can all see right here, per SNY, as as you guys can see right up here, SNY has a following. The Mets have reportedly discussed multiple names with the White Sox that they could explore a trade there for Luis Robert. And not only has that been reaffirmed by multiple reporting out of more so the Mets camp, but it has been reaffirmed across Major League Baseball. And folks, this is what happens when talks usually start to heat up. Whenever they heat up with a player in the offseason as well as leading up to the trade deadline, what is the commonality is that you get a lot of people, but more so now on a nationwide level, reiterating what everyone else already knows. And the reason why they're saying that is because they themselves are hearing those same exact things, and they're also hearing that the talks are continuing to be ongoing. The way that they are right now with the Mets is you guys, you and I are talking right now is the same way that things are likely happening to at least certain degrees there with the Mets and the White Sox. And as we see from Mark Feinsand there of, mind you, MLB, Luis Robert Jr. is on the radar of several teams, including the Mets per sources. The center fielder has struggled at the plate, but obviously we know the past 6 weeks, 6 home runs, 19 RBIs, 853 OPS in his last 28 games. Certainly not something to be complaining about based on the latest sample size. Buster Olney there of ESPN. Division rivals are vying for outfielder Luis Robert for the White Sox, yada, yada, yada. Really don't need to expand too much more on everything that Buster had to say there, but the point is that he obviously had made note of not only the Mets, but also the fact that we've seen guys like Luis Angel Acuna and Mark Vientos among the names that have come up in those trade conversations. And Vientos, we're not surprised to see that. That is more of the same. That is more of what we've expected. But Acuna's name is not something that we know reportedly to be the case up until now. And I have a lot to say about that, as well as what you guys can see here in the following, as the Mets here are in fact given the understanding of what it'll take to land Robert, at least prospect-wise, as the White Sox are looking for a top 10 prospect in any trade involving Luis Robert, as that was broken from Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic earlier today. And speaking of The Athletic, they also came out with a piece this past day that I want to reiterate to you guys, some key notes from our guy in Wolf Salmon, as well as others there, that stated the following. The Mets prefer to trade Vientos instead of their better prospects. They also know that Vientos' value with 4+ years left of control is probably greater than obviously bringing in a rental, which is why most rentals that you would only have for 2 months are not really appealing enough for the Mets to go the lengths to trade Vientos. They also stated, or at least what's being relayed here, is that in order to trade someone like Mark, the Mets have to be getting something of significance in return. And that's very subjective, right? Because significant for me may be very different than you when it comes to, okay, I think Luis Robert would be a significant add if he goes back to performing the way that he's been the past 6 weeks, as well as, you know, more of the flashes from 2023 versus what we saw last year and the first half of this season. But at the same time, you might say to yourself as a fan, I want nothing to do with Luis Robert, and I don't think that he would be a significant add at all. I think if the Mets land him, that he would be at best a league average batter, and while the defense and base running is electric when it's right, just how much of a needle mover is that for Mark Vientos, who we know can single-handedly impact the game with one swing of the bat? The way that he most certainly did yesterday with his first grand salami of the regular season there, that was sadly in the Mets' defeat by a final score of 7-6 as the Mets were walked off, that we broke down our post-game show this past day. But all right, guys, that's what we have there to a degree on the front of where things stand between the Mets and the White Sox, having everything to do with Luis Robert. So let's deep dive this further now and get into not only Robert's game, but as well as ultimately what the Mets could potentially be had here via trade. I would also like to preface, guys, that as you guys can see there from the stats down below, those are off by 2 games. Robert has played 86 games now, not 84. I just made that graphic a couple days ago from the last time that we spoke about Robert, and the only thing that's really changed is that the numbers have gotten better. Yes, Robert hit himself a bomb, a 2-run opposite field shot against the Phillies yesterday at the time of dropping this video, and he's now at right around a 205 average. So again, not much has changed there, but he's got 11 home runs now, 38 runs scored, 43 RBIs, and 26 stolen bases, which, mind you, is the most stolen bags that Robert has ever had in a season. He had 23 last year in 100 games, and he had 20 the year prior that we saw in 2023 in 145 games. So he's doing that at a lesser sample size than ever before. And as it was just relayed there that I showed you guys, what is the appeal behind someone like Luis Robert? The appeal is that you're bringing in someone that is a clear bounce back candidate, a clear change of scenery candidate, and a player that's obviously getting hot at the right time because we know how desperately this man wants to be traded. It goes without saying that Luis Robert will be the first to tell you that he would love nothing more than to pack up his bags and get out of Southside Chicago. The great news for Robert is that likelihood is at least probably 80+% to happen from now up until the deadline itself. It is max time to trade away Robert while he's starting to heat up, and knowing that he has a club option of $20 million at the end of the season, most teams do not want to pick that up. However, and this is what may shock you guys, is that the rates for center fielders are so pronounced, outfielders in general, Major League Baseball, that if you guys think that the Mets are going to trade for Robert and then automatically let him walk, I got a bridge to sell you. There is little to no chance that would actually happen. What would happen is that if the Mets say decline that $20 million option, they would do the best thing in their power to negotiate a new deal for a lesser rate in which Robert would hopefully accept instead of going elsewhere there in the free agent market. But why take that risk in the free agent market if you're going to give up any assets that you obviously didn't love the idea of giving up, but you're going to do that for the case here in Robert? Well, if you're the Mets here, if you like Luis Robert as much as everyone is claiming to be the case there, including Bob Nightingale of USA Today that we interviewed on the platform this past week, he said that not only do the White Sox love Mark Vientos, but these connections between the two teams have been going on for months, and they've already talked about, exchanging farms, including the Mets and their prospects that they have to offer. And that's notable because we know the White Sox are in the market for at least one top 10 prospect in a trade for Robert, including potentially the Mets having to give up an asset of one of those young infielders. I mean, that's at least what it appears. At the same time, I don't see a chance in what, or if the Mets say traded 1-for-1 Mark Vientos for Robert, that the White Sox would be trying to demand more. Because if you're David Stearns and you're the Mets, you hang up the phone. You probably hang up the phone on the idea of trading 1-for-1 Vientos for Robert as is, just because in the case of Mark, you probably would want to package him, in my opinion, and a deal of more significance than just bringing back Robert, and that being the end-all be-all. But when it comes to why is he appealing to this Mets team, and why should Mets fans have at least a level of interest in bringing in someone like Robert, it has everything to do with the fact of, one, he's a clear change of scenery candidate. You guys really think that Robert's going to put up the same underwhelming offensive numbers the way he has for the past year and a half by going to a contender versus a White Sox team that, newsflash, he hasn't been great on since the last time the White Sox were at least decent as a team, right? In 2023, the White Sox were obviously not playing their best baseball, but they weren't as bad as what they've been the past couple seasons. And we've seen Robert blossom by taking part in some of the solid runs that the White Sox have there that we saw with their young core group between himself, Eloy Jimenez, Yoan Moncada, etc. Before that was all torn down because they obviously could not get the winning ways consistent there to push for postseason play year by year. So Robert now is available. He's destined to be on a contending team, and he's destined to be in a lineup, especially a Mets club right now, that if he's added to this team, you automatically have such a deeper lineup than you previously had, and it allows him to really see a lot of pitches a hit. You put Robert in that 7th spot, especially in this lineup, a spot that we've seen famously Tyrone Taylor bat plenty this year, and that's really where I think you're going to see someone like him thrive, especially if, say, McNeil's right ahead of him, and then you say we're in Alvarez or right below, like the youth movement that the Mets have going between Vientos, Alvarez, Ronnie, Beatty even, all heading well, it could not come at a better time. It makes things more difficult for David Stearns and what he plans to do trade-wise, but at the same time, it's upticking these players' value, and it's really going to help the Mets in their active negotiation here and Mr. Luis Robert. So, we talked about all the reasons as to why the Mets are planning on bringing in Luis Robert. You also add in the fact that a rival club in the Philadelphia Phillies like Robert as well. They've been active in those talks as well. But as Bob Nightingale stated on the platform here just a couple of days ago, he said that while the Phillies like Robert, the Mets like him more. And it really does appear that it's kind of the Mets to lose in the case of Robert, especially if, say, the White Sox find themselves asking for too much of a king's ransom for a guy that, I'm sorry, I know that they're pushing for 2023 value, but he's not that 38 home run hitter, and they cannot try to pull that nonsense as if a team's going to go out and spend an absurd amount of trade capital for the sake of a Luis Robert that they themselves, the team that invests in him, has to then consider investing $20 million for next season. That alone is the counter behind why Robert is not going to get an absolute haul of a trade package in return there for the White Sox, but you have to give to get. So what do the Mets have to give up in this scenario? Well, as we stated, it's twofold. Acuna and Mark Vientos have come up in trade talks. Now, out of the two players there, Do I think an Acuna for Robert swap is feasible? Yeah, I do. And I think a Robert for Acuna swap would be a tremendous trade for the Mets, as a matter of fact, by adding to an area of need after trading away an area of abundance the way that you have with your multiple infielders. The problem for the White Sox, though, and I can understand the counter, is they probably want more than just Acuna, even for Robert and even as underwhelming as he's been. So if that is a situation where they're demanding that they would like at least some type of prospect return, one, I would do everything in my power to deviate away from top 10 prospect. But if that is really what they're trying to be stubborn on, then okay, let's trade a guy like Blake Tidwell. Because when we take a look at the Mets top 10 prospect rankings, currently, per MLB Pipeline, they dropped not all that long ago. Right now, it's Jet Williams at 1, Jonathan at 2, Noah McLean at 3, Carson Benj at 4, Brennan Sproat at 5, Jacob Reimer at 6, Ryan Clifford at 7, Jesus Baez at 8, AJ Ewing at 9, and Blake Tidwell at 10. Blake Tidwell's a top 10 prospect, and we know that in the case of Tidwell, that while he has some electric stuff, would probably bode well elsewhere where he's going to be given more of a guaranteed opportunity than his very limited options that he has right now with the Mets, as we have an abundance of pitchers that we honestly like more than Tidwell to a degree as a starter at the major league level. Could this be a deal where an Acuna and Tidwell is what it takes for Robert? But then you're saying to yourself, did we just give up too much for Luis Robert? That is a proper counter as well, depending on how those guys develop. Then you also say to yourself, if you're the White Sox, you probably really want a guy like Jesus Baez or AJ Ewing. AJ Ewing has been the Mets prospect that's skyrocketing the farm this year. He's a speed demon. He plays the outfield and second base. There's so much to love about AJ Ewing. He's been batting right around 300 and 800 OPS all year long, doing fantastic things there for the Brooklyn Cyclones in high A. But Ewing has skyrocketed in the farm this year, and he's a guy the Mets do not want to part with. But a lot of teams are loving AJ Ewing as they're actively scouting him. Jesus Baez falls in that category as well. A power-hitting infielder who plays some great defense. When he's right, a lot of raw potential there for Baez, who I do not want to see dealt at all. So if you're asking Wardy, the Mets fan right now, would I be happy if I saw we landed Luis Robert, but it came at the cost of a Jesus Baez and an AJ Ewing? No, I would not be happy, as a matter of fact, because if you're the White Sox, you probably do not want to give him that $20 million option for the end of the season. So if that's the case, then you are then going to allow Robert to hit the free agent market. So you have to evaluate this to a degree as if Robert is being treated as a rental. Not that the Mets would just automatically say no to the $20 million option, but the way that the White Sox most certainly would, unless they felt inclined to do so to pick it up for the sake of just trying to get some type of assets out of him heading into the 2026 season if they didn't trade him now. But out of everything that has been relayed in the public eye and what I've heard personally in the industry over the past 24 to 48 hours, it's telling that not only have talks heated up between both sides here, but that the likelihood of a guy in Robert getting traded is so significant right now, and the likelihood of it being the Mets is probably greater than most. I mean, if Robert doesn't land with the Mets, where's he going to go? The Philadelphia Phillies have been in that category. The San Diego Padres have been in that category. What is the common theme with teams that have had interest in Robert? They are rival contending teams to the Mets and the National League. And here's the thing. What do those teams also have in common? They have deep lineups. So if Robert gets traded to the Phillies, you can expect him to blossom there. If he gets traded to the Padres, you can probably expect him to blossom there. You guys see the point I'm trying to make? Robert is destined to probably land in the National League with a top contending team if it's not going to be the Mets. All the more reason for the Mets to go out and make sure that they can get this deal done as long as it's at the right price. And when we talk about not only Acuna, as he's a man that could potentially be traded here, we also have to talk about another man there, that being in Mark Vientos, because Mark Vientos has been without question the talk of the town. And when we expand on not only what Mark had to say with the media, but ultimately what the vibes have been like with him, we know that with just the swing of the bat, that Mark Vientos is a clear difference maker. A great evidence and example of that was him hitting that grand salami this past night. Seriously. So as we deep dive a little bit more here on Mr. Mark Vientos and what he has to say with the media, this is coming with an exclusive interview with Anthony Tacoma this past day. Giacomo dropped it right around 4 a.m. Eastern, so I respect the grind there for him. Granted, I know he's out west there with the club, but you get the point I'm trying to make. As we get into this, here are some key quotes from Mark Vientos regarding his current status with the Mets and these trade rumors, and they are as follows, and I quote, "I feel like I'm swinging a lot better, and I'm playing a lot less now," Vientos said. "It is what it is. What can I do? The only thing I can control is keep getting better, and whenever I get the opportunity, try to help the team." He then said both teams battled in regards to the Mets losing 7-6. You're talking about two playoff teams. I thought it was a great game. And I tend to agree outside of the schmuck that was the umpire and Helen Keller over there. As we expand more, we see Carlos Mendoza talking about, obviously, Mark Vientos and the frustration level. And he said it was really good to see Mark Vientos have the type of game that he had today. Expanding on that, we do see that obviously people tend to forget real quick, Mark Vientos said, and reply the fact that he broke out for 27 home runs last year. So you can tell that Mark is obviously not happy to be in trade rumors, but I think the frustration is far more about the fact of the idea of him being dealt by a club that he wants to clearly stay with than it is about anything else, right? He knows what he needs to do in order to get more playing time, but maybe he doesn't at the same time because he's still questioning, I'm hitting the baseball better than I ever have this season, and I'm getting less playing time. Well, Mark, let's not forget the key context and how we got here. The most important thing about why you are not an everyday player is because you've completely fallen off a cliff with any and every defensive upside that comes along with you out of the third base position. And I'm not saying this is easy, because as Mark stated himself, it is very difficult to be in that type of limited role. And to expand more on this, I see it as a good thing regarding the trade rumors, he says. It's a good thing that I'm being talked about. You can see it as like, damn, it's bad. But I see it as like, man, I'm that important in the league that I'm being talked about in trade rumors. Obviously, though, it sucks because I don't want to be traded, but this is a business. At the end of the day, I feel like it is what it is. What else can I do? And the answer to that is play better defense at the hot quarter when you've been given those opportunities, not look like a deer in headlights almost every single time out there. And I don't see that as a slight to Mark. I'd like to make that clear. I like Vientos a lot. I wish him well, regardless on his future status and if this will be with the Mets post-trade deadline on the 31st or if this is going to be elsewhere. But what I can tell you regarding Mark is that, according to Carlos Mendoza, he knows that he's frustrated, right? And understandably so. He said he's not happy, was how Mendoza described Vientos' attitude about the part-time role, but also understanding that he's got an opportunity and that when he's in the lineup, he can help us win ball games and try to make the most of it. Mark did state that it is extremely difficult to be playing and trying to improve as a player in a part-time role. And he's 100% correct. Any young and experienced player that only has like one Major League Baseball season under their belt, color me shocked that they're not handling the limited opportunities when they're not starting at third base every day. They'll get a start at third, then they won't be playing for the next 48 or 24 hours at least, and then he gets a start at DH. But here's the thing. It's the bigs. It's one of those things that you have to do. And when Mark is asked if he's expressed these concerns with Mets management at all in regards to how difficult this part-time role has been, he replies with a very blunt no, because there's really no point. Nobody cares. Nobody really cares. And to be honest, how I feel, that's how I feel, but it's the business. So this was horrendous wording by Vientos. I'm sure he'd be the first to tell you that. I think it goes without saying that Mark clearly dealt with the fact that this is a lot of frustration built up right now. But the fact that he has not spoken to the Mets at all about this, I find rather interesting. I mean, the fact that he feels so inclined to say that they don't care, how there's literally no point because you're not going to get anywhere, is interesting. Like, why not consider the conversation at least once? What made you believe that that was going to be the end result? And what made him believe that way is obviously from what the dynamic has been like between himself and Mendoza and this Mets coaching staff. All the more reason to believe that the Mets obviously are comfortable trading away Mark Vientos at the right price. And as I stated earlier in the show, and I will reiterate this once more, the Mets prefer to trade Mark Vientos instead of giving up some of their more heralded top prospects, per the Athletics reporting as of the past 24 hours. The Mets, however, do not love the idea of trading Vientos away for just, say, a 2-month rental, which is why if you traded for Robert, I promise you, Robert would be with the Mets here for 2026 and beyond at minimum. There just makes little to no sense. Why would the Mets at all consider trade away a controllable asset who had 27 home runs last year and can be a weapon at any point, a force for you at any point, for a player that you knew would not be coming back after 2 months? That is not going to happen. So as much as you Mets fans may hate the idea of buying into that $20 million club option, I'm telling you, that's far more likely it to happen than for Robert to walk, and the Mets traded away key assets for a rental player there, and Robert will not be the case. I can almost guarantee that at this point in time. As we expand more, though, on Vientos' remarks here, everybody, he definitely has made it known, obviously, that he wants to be with the Mets. He does not want to be traded, but he's also making it known that this is the reality of the business, and I'm going to have the feeling, and I'm going to react the way that I want to react. And 3 days out of the deadline, Vientos has no idea whether he will be moved. He just wants whatever to happen to be in his best interest for him and his career. You know, his phone has been blowing up with trade rumors, but until something actually happens, Vientos will remain focused on chances he does receive. And that's obviously the way that he needs to be thinking going forward. He said, I felt good at the plate today as of yesterday. I felt better at the plate for sure. So that's obviously encouraging. You could see the fire under his you-know-what by getting not only quality at-bats there against the Padres, he had his home run robbed by Fernando Tatis. Apologies if I had an audio hiccup there for a second, everybody. And don't worry, we are getting the audio issues figured out. I actually have someone that's going to try to help me later on today at my house regarding the mics, as well as I just sent in an order for new mini mics, lapel mics. So at minimum, if say this mic has an issue and streams and stuff going forward, in a couple of days, I will also have my lapel mics like I've done in the past. That way we have multiple microphone options, everybody. I hear you in the comments. I pay attention. I see them all. Thank you so much for the support. As we get back in this one, final thing I have to say about Mark Vientos is I do not want to see Mark traded. However, I think it's becoming increasingly obvious that Mark Vientos may not be wearing Mets orange and blue beyond July 31st. I hope that isn't the case, but I will not be at all surprised if it happens. But I think the big question now is, can the Mets pull off a trade for Luis Robert without trading away Mark Vientos? And my answer to that is I really feel like that they absolutely can get that job done. And whether that's a Luis Angel Acuna and a Blade Tidwell, if you're asking for my honest opinion, would I trade away Acuna and his multiple years of control and a Blade Tidwell if it meant Luis Robert, knowing you're likely going to keep him beyond this season? Yeah, I would. I actually think I would be able to stomach that more than trading Mark Vientos for Robert 1-for-1. And it's not just because of my appreciation for Mark as a batter, as it is the reality. I think the Mets can maximize Mark in a deal separate than just a 1-for-1 for Robert, for maybe something of more significance, as what's been relayed through The Athletic, because we don't know exactly what that term significant means. It's very subjective. What I think is significant of a player return could be completely contrasting to what you fellow Mets fans or rival fans that are watching this right now may feel as well. So this is going to be a fascinating one to follow, everybody, but to say things are heating up is an understatement. So get yourself buckled up and ready for the ride that is this MLB trade deadline, everybody. As you know plenty, but if you don't, let me reiterate, we will be covering everything regarding what the Mets do or don't do now leading up to the deadline. You guys will continue to get you guys will get content pumped out from yours truly daily regarding everything regarding this club. Any new player the Mets are connected to, we will cover in some form or fashion in our pre-recorded video or in our post-game live show or in a separate live stream that's just more based on trade news and rumors. Be on the lookout for that. We have a lot of things cooking, obviously, including our Wardy Day, just a couple of days away. So if you guys still have interest in those tickets available, check them out down below. We are literally just a couple days away. It's this Friday. So if you guys want to hang out with me, this is your last chance to get the opportunity to do so. But I did want to make sure that everyone has their fair shot at those tickets there before we have everything set in stone for the event. We already have an awesome contingent of people showing up. I can't wait to hang out with each and every one of you guys. I'm hoping that as we have that Wardy Day on August 1st, the day after the deadline, that we have Luis Robert making his Mets debut, if not already had made his Mets debut there, maybe a game prior. So if something happens in the next 24 hours, we will just have to wait and see. But I am very excited to see what is going to happen from now up until the deadline. And when you guys need trade deadline coverage, especially, do not miss a beat. Make sure you have the notification bell on. Make sure you're subscribed, because we are going to be live here for pretty much all day on the day of the trade deadline. We will be live earlier. Actually, I think I'm going to start as early as the AM potentially on the East Coast on the day of the deadline. Then we'll be live up until right around 3:30 p.m. in that range, because I'll be live in the Bleacher Report app then, as well as on YouTube for Bleacher Report's main YouTube channel with right around 4 or 5 million subscribers. So you guys can check me out there, as well as the app, as I'll be breaking down all trades, everything that happens, and right around an hour and a half or 2 hour span there for Bleacher Report for Major League Baseball trade deadline coverage. And then I'll be back live here on WardyNYM for the final hour or so of the deadline, because the Mets may still have some tricks up their sleeve and maybe they didn't make all their moves by that point. We're going to cover it all. We're going to recap it all that same day, and then we'll get you set for Wardy Day the very next day at Citi Field with your guy Wardy. So Mets fans, again, let me know all your thoughts on what is happening with Luis Robert and the active trade talks going on. They're heating up. We know that very well, and something that we have followed along going back to the offseason is as follows, everybody. Do not forget this. When you see the common trend of not just Mets inside reporters and say Andy Martino, Will Salmon, among others, when you get nationwide constantly reiterating Roberts connect to the Mets, the Mets like Robert. Oh, there's active trade talks going on. Oh, they've already talked back and forth about players that the Mets would have to give up versus what the White Sox would have to give up. The fact that all this is coming out does not guarantee anything, but what it does pretty much guarantee is that one, things are heating up, and two, that we're reaching a resolution sooner regarding Robert. So whether the Mets get used like a fiddle for leverage reasons and he gets traded, say, the Phillies or somewhere else, or if Robert does actually land in Queens in the end, rest assured we're going to find out these results sooner rather than later. So thank you guys again so much for watching. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and be on the lookout for post-game coverage later on tonight between the Mets and the Padres. We may also be live for a watch party segment throughout the ballgame tomorrow as well. That's right around 4:10 p.m. Eastern, because we haven't done one with playback in a hot minute. We got to get back on the horse there to give you guys watch party content, so be on the lookout for it all. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. This is your guy Wardy signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out, everybody.